The pediatric ER smelled like antiseptic and metal. The fluorescent lights flickered in this low, cold rhythm that made every second feel slower than the one before it. Nurses kept moving around us, quick and focused, calling codes and shifting machines and saying abbreviations I didn't fully understand while I held my 6-year-old son, Mason, tight against my chest. He looked pale, too pale. His skin felt hot, but he was shaking cold. His fingers curled into my shirt like he was trying to anchor himself to something that wouldn't fall apart. The doctor kept saying the same sentence over and over. He needs blood urgently. I called my parents because I thought that's what normal people did in moments like this. I still had this stupid part of me that believed parents panic when a child is in danger. I still believed somewhere, in some hidden layer of them, they cared about something outside of my brother's existence. They walked into the ER 40 minutes later like they were annoyed to even be there. My mom had perfect eyeliner and my dad had on this ridiculous gold watch he always wore when he wanted to look like a respectable father. My brother, Dean, bounced behind them in full dance competition warm-up gear. Hair gelled, new sneakers, glitter jacket. Mom didn't even look at Mason when she spoke. "How long is this going to take? We have to be at Dean's competition venue by 6. I blinked at her. "He needs blood. The doctor said O negative. You two are the only matches available immediately. They don't have enough in stock today." My voice shook when I tried to speak calmly. "Please, please just donate so they can stabilize him." Dad crossed his arms. "We didn't come here to get stuck in hospital paperwork all day." Dean tugged on Mom's sleeve, smug, like this was all entertainment. "You said we'd get there early so I can warm up." Mom put her hand on her hip and stared at me with this cold, bored confusion. "He always gets sick. You baby him too much. If you didn't spoil him all the time, his immune system would know how to fight things." "He is not spoiled," I said quietly. "He is sick, really sick. They need the blood now." Dad leaned toward my face like he was tired of me not understanding his point. "Your priorities are always dramatic. We have an actual commitment today. You act like one kid matters more than the family as a whole. It doesn't." Mason's breathing got faster. His eyes fluttered shut and opened again like he couldn't decide if he had strength left to stay awake. I looked at my parents like they were strangers who stole my childhood and then dared me to pretend it was normal. Mom rolled her eyes. "Your brother only gets this competition once a year. You can handle this hospital thing on your own." I whispered, "He might not make it if we wait." They both shrugged like I had exaggerated a weather forecast. Dad waved a hand in dismissal. "Stop trying to guilt trip us. If something happens, the hospital will handle it. We're not putting our entire day on hold because you can't manage being a parent." Then they turned around and walked away, just like that. Just like I wasn't begging for my child's life. I watched their backs disappear into the ER hallway, Dean skipping slightly, excited about music and lights and applause, while my son fought to breathe behind me. I pressed my forehead to Mason's hair and tried not to scream. The doctor put a hand on my shoulder and said they were calling another center to rush match blood, but it would take time, critical time. I didn't sit. I didn't break. I just stood next to the bed while the machines beeped in broken rhythm and nurses adjusted lines and whispered urgent-sounding things into radios. Every sound felt like a countdown. I texted my parents again. "He is fading. Please, just come back." They didn't answer. I called twice. Both calls got rejected. I went outside to the empty hallway near the vending machine because I needed air to raise my head long enough not to collapse in front of my child. My hands shook so hard I spilled coins when I tried to buy water. I slid down the wall onto the floor and just sat there for a second staring at nothing. Not numb, not shocked, just aware. Aware this wasn't the first time they abandoned me. Aware this was simply the first time it was life or death, and they still didn't choose me. The doctor ran toward me minutes later and said they found a match from another hospital rushing it. I nodded and stood up because breakdowns didn't get to happen yet. No tears came, not one. I walked back into Mason's room and held his hand through every beep, through every unseen battle inside his little body, through every silent second where the world held its breath and dared me to break. My parents posted a picture on Instagram that night from Dean's dance event. Mom wrote, "So proud" in all caps with a sparkle emoji. I stared at that screen while my son slept connected to IV lines and oxygen tubes. That night was the moment something inside me quietly got up off the floor and never sat back down again, because after that night, I finally accepted the truth I kept running from. They wouldn't save my child. They wouldn't save me. And one day, they were going to learn what it felt like when I stopped saving them. The next morning, Mason opened his eyes slowly, like waking up was heavier than sleep itself. He whispered that his chest hurt, but he wanted pancakes when he got better. His voice was weak but steady enough that the doctor said the new blood supply was holding. When they finally told me he was no longer in critical danger, I didn't feel relief the way I expected. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I didn't collapse with gratitude. I just stared at him and realized I had crossed something invisible overnight. I stopped being their daughter. I just hadn't said it out loud yet. A nurse came in to adjust the monitor and gently asked if there were grandparents she should call for support. I said no, and the word tasted final. Just 2 letters, but it felt like cutting a rope. When Mason slept again, I stepped outside into the hallway and sat on the same bench where I begged for them the night before. But this time I wasn't begging for anything. I scrolled through their Instagram pictures again, one after another, Dean posing like a prince while they cheered for him like he was the only life they ever valued. I zoomed in on Mom's face. There was no guilt, no worry, no tension. It wasn't that they forgot me. They chose not to care. The nurse returned with paperwork, explaining insurance, follow-up tests, future transfusions, precautions. I signed every form with both hands steady. There was no question anymore of what they could or would contribute. Nothing. I looked at their numbers in my contacts and felt disgust like it was foreign poison in my phone. When Mason was finally able to go home, I carried him inside the apartment wrapped in his dinosaur blanket, and something in him sensed the shift too. He didn't ask for them again, not once, not even softly, not even accidentally. 2 months passed. Mason improved. Slowly, carefully, step by step. I rearranged my entire work schedule to match his appointments. I sold jewelry just to buy better vitamins. I slept on the couch when he needed the bed to be propped a certain way. Nobody helped. Nobody offered. Nobody asked. Mom texted only once during those 2 months. Not to check on him, but to send a picture of Dean holding a trophy the size of his torso. See? When people aren't dragged down by drama, look what they achieve. I stared at that message so long the letters blurred. I typed no response. That message alone was the final thread snapping inside me. Dad called a week later acting confused why I wasn't attending a family lunch at a restaurant 2 hours away like everything was normal. When I reminded him what he did in the hospital, he didn't apologize. He didn't even try. He just said, "Stop clinging to one moment. You always exaggerate." "One moment?" I repeated quietly. He hung up on me. That was when I knew they weren't just dangerous emotionally. They were dangerous in the way that erases you slowly over years, not seconds. They rewrote the narrative every time until you questioned your own memory. I didn't tell Mason anything dramatic. I didn't explain trauma or abandonment or betrayal. I just said, "We're not going to be spending time with them anymore." And he nodded, very small, very sure, like he had known that was coming all along. Then, slowly, quietly, I started building. Not to prove anything to them, not to make a show. I built because I needed a world where Mason never saw cruelty disguised as family again. I took more hours. I moved to a job with better insurance. I found a small parenting support group for single mothers. I learned how to live without waiting for them to ruin a day. And then something happened I wasn't expecting. My parents started calling again, not to check on Mason, but because Dean's life wasn't as picture-perfect anymore. Financial issues, missed sponsorship, a scandal in his dance academy that cost them thousands. They needed money. They needed help navigating something. They needed someone they could trust. Suddenly, I mattered again. Suddenly, the drama daughter was useful. They started texting multiple times a week, pretending they were trying to reconnect, sending forced nostalgia pictures, quoting scriptures about forgiveness, saying things like, "Families go through hard seasons." It was laughable in a sick way. This time, I didn't panic. I didn't wish for peace. I didn't wish to be understood. I didn't hope they'd see me differently. I was waiting, not for revenge yet, but for the exact opening where they would learn the quiet cost of abandoning your own blood in a hospital hallway. And when that opening arrived, when they desperately needed something real, I would be the one holding the door they expected me to open. Only this time, I wouldn't. It was almost 2 years later when they called again. Mom first, her voice stretched too thin to sound proud anymore. She started with small talk about the weather, about Dean, about nothing real. Then finally she said it. Dad's kidneys were failing. They needed blood. They were looking for O-negative donors again. I stood in my kitchen, phone against my ear, watching Mason color at the table. He was healthy now, strong, bright-eyed, laughing at a cartoon humming in the background. The same blood type they once refused to give him now stood between them and whatever counted as survival. Mom hesitated before saying it clearly. "You're the only compatible one. If you could just help for your father." I could almost hear her trying to sound noble as if history had been erased. She didn't ask about Mason, didn't apologize, just begged in that quiet, manipulative way, the same tone she once used when she wanted a favor dressed as forgiveness. I asked, calm, "Do you remember the hospital, the night Mason almost died?" She went silent for a second, then exhaled sharply. "Oh, don't start that again. We were late, that's all. You make everything dramatic." I laughed softly, not cruel, just hollow. "You walked out while my son was dying." Another pause. I could hear her swallow, and maybe for a moment she realized she had run out of ways to twist it. Then she whispered, "You can't hold a grudge forever." "I'm not," I said. "I just don't forget." Dad's voice broke in the background, hoarse, demanding, weaker than I remembered. "Tell her to stop being selfish. Family helps family." I didn't even flinch. "Family?" I repeated. "You made that word mean nothing." He muttered something about me being ungrateful, that I owed him my existence. I ended the call mid-sentence. No screaming, no dramatic goodbye. Just a click and silence. They called for weeks. Then they switched to texts, then to voicemails. Mom crying, Dad begging, Dean saying, "Please, it's serious." I didn't block them. I just didn't answer. The silence was the same kind they once gave me when I begged them to save my child. Mason's next birthday came quietly. He blew out his candles and hugged me tight. I watched him laugh and realized this warmth, this peace, was what they could never understand. Love without leverage. Care without conditions. Months later, Dean messaged that Dad's condition worsened. I read it once, locked my phone, and took Mason out for ice cream. We sat near the park under streetlights, talking about school and colors and simple living things. I didn't celebrate their downfall. I didn't dance on their misery. I just didn't go back. That was my revenge. When people who abandoned you realize they need what they refused to give, that's when they meet the truth. That night, as Mason slept beside me, the phone buzzed again and again on the counter. I let it ring until it stopped. They taught me that blood didn't make family. So when they needed mine, I stayed quiet. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video.